Jay, good to see you, brother. How's it going?
Hey, morning, Jack. How are you?
Good, man. I'm so glad that we found a time to do this together. So thanks for coming on the podcast. And I know we met at a defense focused conference, I don't know, maybe about a year ago. And I thought your background was pretty inspiring and pretty unique. I think I've met maybe four or five guys that came from the ground side, either infantry or special operations, and then transitioned into an aviation role. Most of the guys I know transitioned into a rotary craft aviation role, but a couple guys I know are flying King Airs with a bunch of gear on it. So
Ugh. Ugh. No fixing it, man.
yeah. So how'd you get in? Where did your interest spark in joining the military? I think you joined initially. Like, what was your interest? I don't think I ever asked you that.
um, I was pretty much a little loudmouth punk whose mouth got him into a lot of trouble, fights and stuff like that. And I was living in Las Vegas. I was born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada. Just not going down a good path. And a couple suggestions from some very good mentors. One being my martial arts instructor, a couple other people, and they're like, "Yeah, the Marine Corps would probably be better than jail."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, might have been a judge in there or something. I don't know, but I kind of walked into the recruiting office, and it wasn't even a thought. Like the other branches and stuff didn't even. I was like, "Which one's the hardest?" Like, the Marine Corps. I was like, "Okay." So I'll just go do that. They
That's
said,
awesome.
yeah, you're going to be an 0311. I was like, okay, what's that? So, yeah, 1993, so old. But the longer I spent in the Marine Corps, the more I wanted to do. And I got busted swimming by myself in the ocean by a gunny who was a reconnaissance Marine. So when he got done berating me and then telling me how wrong I was for free diving by myself uh, in Okinawa, Japan, he says, "Be at my office tomorrow. When we get back to 20 miles, report to my office." So I get in there and he says, "Be at the pool tomorrow at zero dark 30. UDT shorts, light coat of CLP." Right? And I'm like, okay. So I show up and I got on my kit, and these guys get out and they're in the black hoodies and PT gear, and they start yelling at me. They're like, "Get in the pool." So I get in the pool, and they're like, "Hold the brick out of water, hold the brick out of water, swim 500 meters, swim 500 meters." Finally, on the road march, they're like, "Do you want to quit?" And I'm like, "Quit what?" They're like, "Stop, dude. Like, this is a reconnaissance Marine indoctrination program. Do you want to be a recon Marine?" Sure, that sounds cool. Okay, keep
Oh,
walking. So I just kept walking. It's kind of silly. But I had some really dynamic leaders that saw something in me, I guess. I don't know, just the fact that I wanted to do hard stuff and I didn't ever quit. And I would drown before I quit, I think. And yeah, so I just became a reconnaissance Marine, and I got sent to some really cool schools. They sent me to Ranger School and Sniper School and all that other stuff. Did a couple of MUSOC deployments, which was a lot of fun. Got in a bad way in Operation Southern Watch in Kuwait, and there's a couple of AH-64 Apaches on the flight line, and that was
oh,
it.
nice. That's
That
awesome.
was it.
So,
Yeah, I went to this guy. He was a pilot, and he's in the flight suit. He's got the mustache, and he's folding his bangs back, and I'm just like, and he smelled good, like he had taken a shower in like the last 30 days, which I hadn't. Um, and I'm kind of like, "I want your job, man." He's like, "Don't worry about it. I used to be in the Marine Corps." And I was like, "What? Like, how do you get from here to there?" Because I'm kind of dumb. Like, I walk on my knuckles. And he said, "No, you put in a warrant officer flight program, and you put in a packet. You get a flight physical. I'll walk you through it. It's easy." And it wasn't easy, but I put it in, and for some reason, the Army was like, "Sure, we'll give this guy a multi-million-dollar attack helicopter," and started flying. I got to the 101st and right after 9/11, and General Dick Cody came in, and his son was my platoon leader, and they said, Alpha Company's already in Afghanistan. Blue Max, pack your crap. You're leaving tomorrow. And I literally had like less than 200 hours total flight time
oh,
in the air.
wow.
Total flight time, not just in the Apache, like total.
Total.
And they said, "Yeah, you're going in and you're doing the recovery for Operation Anaconda." And I'm like, "Oh, what? Where?"
You got
And
thrown right into it.
yeah, and it was, but again, right place, right time. And I had amazing leaders. General Richardson, Mark Miller was my backseater and my instructor pilot, and I was lost like last year's Easter egg up there in the front seat. And he's like, Jay, start hunting. And these ground guys were calling us up, and they said, any American Apache? And I'm like, I think we're the only we're the only Apaches up here, right? I think they're talking to us, Mark. He's like, yeah, answer him. You're a ground guy. Because he starts reading me this 9-line, like I'm a fixed wing. He's like, yeah, I have enemy targets at 200 mils. And I'm like, I got nothing in the cockpit that says mils, brother.
No.
Like, could you just give me like stand up and point? And this captain stands up and he's doing this, and I'm following the line. And so we start engaging. The funniest part of that story isn't that, it's that about 2 years ago, there's this gentleman at a bar here in Huntsville, and he's telling this story about this Apache. He's talking to on the radio in Operation Anaconda. He says, I just stood up and went like this, and he flew over our head, and there's 30 Mike brass falling on us. And I says, yeah, I'm a TAC 24, man. Pleasure to meet you. He's
That's
like, what?
awesome.
I was like, yeah, that was me, man. I was like, what? He's like, oh, okay. So yeah, we've been friends ever since. But yeah, I for some reason I have this weird thing. I only do things for like 6 or 7 years, then I got to go do something else. Another wild hair, and a buddy of mine called me up and says, hey, do you want to be a SEER instructor? I was like, oh, yeah, this Camp Slapahoe. Yeah, oh yeah, I did that. Let's try that. And so I went to Fort Rucker, Fort Novosel now, of course, in 2007, and became a SEER instructor. When they first got it up to a sea level course, I went in there and mainly taught survival and evasion. A lot of shooting. We shot in the range every week. Helped develop some of the courses, not just from an aviator, because they were all aviators or going to be aviators.
Yeah.
So I didn't have just their aviation perception, but I had a ground perception and a soft perception of look, man, I've trained to do recovery missions as a reconnaissance Marine. I see it from their perspective. What I want you to do is being a good evader, and the things you're going to go through. And then I can take my skill sets of being able to walk the woods and evade and think like the enemy and all that kind of stuff, basic patrolling, and apply that to their evasion skills and stuff like that. So, but again, worked with some amazing leaders because I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. I got to work with amazing warrant officers, Sam Bennett, Mike Young, Rich Laraway. I mean, these guys were Tim Slifko. Tim's still active. He's a W5 for Christ's sakes, which is just really scary. Don't tell him I said that, but yeah, a really good, tight knit group of guys and women that we communicate weekly to this day. But I eventually realized I needed to get back to the fight. I was hanging out doing the Rucker life a little too long. Yeah, I finished a master's degree and all that. That's great. But went first thing smoking. They're like, you just need to get to RC South. We need a BAO, a Brigade Aviation Officer. We need a personal recovery officer. And you've got the training and experience and all your JPRA courses and all your connections. We need to get that up and running because it's being relatively ignored. And so I deployed with 4ID under Colonel Kolashevsky, again, another great dynamic leader, and straight tankers, which they went to me and they're like, we got to do an air assault a week. We don't have any tanks. I was like, well, that's good because you're not taking a tank on an air assault, bud.
No way.
Well, you're 101st guy and you're an aviator. So, yeah. So I started doing that and, did what chiefs do and started looking at personal recovery from a top-down look in not just Army aviation, but what the ground guys were doing and expecting. And there was huge gaps between what the JSOC, DeSoto types were doing at night and what my guys were doing during the day and what JPRA saw it as. And so I started kind of bridging those gaps. And next thing I know, I'm on air assault missions and I'm hanging out with Australian, special operations guys and kicking in doors. I'm like, what am I would get on an aircraft and put my name board on with my senior aviator wings. And the crew chiefs would be looking at me and they're like, what are you doing, sir? What? I was like, I'm going with them. And they're like, you shouldn't be getting off the aircraft, sir. We're not at the airfield. I was like, I know, man. It's okay, dude. I'm going with these guys. Yeah, so it was really fun, man. Got in a couple of sticky situations as is the case in Afghanistan. A couple IEDs, couple shoots. came home and it was either go back to Army Aviation or get out. And I really didn't. I mean, I hadn't flown anything in like 6 years. I'm not sure I could have found an Apache on a flight line if I had to. All I ever saw was, the bottom of them.
Yeah.
And so it's time to retire. So I retired in 2014.
Cool. Yeah, you've had a varied career, and it sounds like you mentioned, like you had leaders recognize your abilities like early on, and it sounds like that's how you ended up in Force Recon. Was you had leadership kind of recognize that you might be a good fit for that skill set or that career field. So I went to Airborne with a bunch of Force Recon guys.
Oh, God.
I think back in like 2008 or nine, and as soon as we'd be done with physical training and the airborne training, these guys would be like they'd make a beeline for the pool right there at Fort
Yeah.
Benning,
Yeah.
and the way they described the water training was pretty unique to me. Is like they said that's what we did out a lot of people. He said a lot of people, because you obviously you kind of like get tunnel vision as you feel like you're drowning, and he said as long as you can control that tunnel vision, like your physical body has the ability to keep going a little bit
Mhm.
longer than your brain is telling like hey,
You shouldn't be
you know,
doing this, man.
yeah, your check engine lights on, your brain is going crazy, your nervous system is going haywire. And he
Yeah.
said you have a little bit longer, sometimes you have a little bit longer underwater as long as you can control that and control your nervous system. And it's unique too the way you describe communicating between the ground guys communicating with the helicopters. I was really fortunate that right before I went to RC South as a platoon leader, they hooked us up with like the aviation brigade at Fort Bliss,
Nice.
and they
Nice.
had us communicate like in a chair, like just like you and me sitting across a chair from each other. Hey, communicate to this helicopter pilot, and it was an Apache pilot that they paired me up with. And so he said, "Dude, just give me your front light trace. That way we know your current location, where you guys have guys on the ground." And he's like, "Just speak in plain language. Like, just tell us what you want us to do. Give us
Right.
cardinal directions. Ideally, if you have the buildings numbered, like if I submitted a con op, the buildings would all be numbered."
Yep.
And it was way easier that way. I'm so grateful that my commander took the time to do that because that was like it was valuable training, but it was like so informal compared to the fires training like you were describing that where you have
Right.
like mills and you're trying to call in
This is
155s.
line like what? I don't need to know that, dude. What? I'm
Yeah,
trying to write this down at 50 feet. Going 110 knots, trying not to die. Like, just
totally.
speed this up, dude.
You got to speed it up. Yeah, so you got to it's got to happen in real time. The communication has to be crisp. And I was over by the Helmand border in a pretty like way out combat outpost, and so we didn't get a lot of fixed wing, like we didn't get a lot of fancy aircraft. It was, we'd
Right.
get we'd maybe a pink team on station for as long as they could, circle us, and then Apaches were obviously what we wanted, but you don't get a whole lot of time. We didn't get a lot of fixed wings on station where we were, so
Yeah, the pink team thing was really interesting. How that came
yeah,
about. It was kind of a re-insurgent, or whatever you say. It was just all of a sudden became a great idea out of nowhere. I was Iskandria. Is that what it's called? I was south of Mosul
okay,
in Iraq, and really good friend of mine. Met him in Warrant Officer Candidate School, SF Ranger type. Went and flew Kiowas. 6'4", 225 pounds, monster of a man, crammed into that aircraft somehow, some way, and flew the heck out of that thing, man. And he was taking fire over Mosul all the time. And
really,
I'm out here in an Apache attack helicopter doing idiot circles, and yeah, and
I took this for my striker.
yeah, nice.
That's how close
Yeah,
they were.
there's Mike, and they were, man, they were extreme close air support.
Yep.
And I called him. I said, "Hey, man, let's just synchronize. Like, I'm flying night missions, you're flying night missions. Just call me on the radio." And he's like, "Yeah, meet me on Five Finger, VHF 1, 2, 3, 4, .5, whatever." And so we started talking, and he's like, "Yeah, we're taking." I'm like, "Well, get your ass out of the way, dude. Here comes some 30 Mike," and we land, and Gregory Gass, the colonel, is like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "It just sounded like a good idea." He's like, "Yeah, you're grounded. You should probably run that by your leaders before you just like make stuff up." And we're like, "Well, sir, it just sounded like a good idea." He's like, "Well, you're grounded, and you're going to go teach the infantry about this,
Oh wow.
and you're going to work on this abbreviated 9-line thing that we're coming up with." and you're going to start communicating with the infantry in a more efficient manner. And we're going to work on this pink team thing that you guys are, read in a Vietnam book. And it kind of grew from there. I mean, and there were some other things. I went back to Fort Rucker to do the transition into Delta models. And
Okay.
they're like, hey, we want you to study this performance planning card so that you know what your power and stuff like that and your limitations in the aircraft are at given altitudes, density, altitude, temperature, winds, all that stuff, right? It's all calculated in there. And the longbow does it for you. The alpha models that I flew, yeah, it was you, a ruler, and writing down numbers and doing math, and I was horrible at it. But they brought up an example of like a 15,000 pound aircraft at 10,000 feet, 46 degrees Celsius, and I'm like, how the hell looks familiar? I think that was my PPC in Afghanistan when we went into Operation Anaconda. And it was because my wingman was like, Eric Hoffman. He's like, yeah, that's exactly what we were flying, brother.
Yeah.
And they were using that as training. So it's awesome to see all those lessons learned. And it takes dynamic leaders to make that happen, to bring those lessons learned and let them evolve in the fight
Yeah.
in real time. And again, General Gaylor is another one. I got to fly with General Gaylor, several missions, an entire deployment to Iraq in those Delta models, and then we learned so fast. And we had the leadership to say, yeah, we're going to start using Illume rockets in this way, and we're going to program them into the aircraft so that they have higher altitudes. Jay, we're going to go out and shoot some Illume rockets and just see where they land.
Cool.
We're going to program in different altitudes, and we're going to offset, and we're going to do these things and see if this provides illumination for the enemy, because we're running out of artillery illume. Our fast movers don't want to do it. The Air Force's mind, that's not a good mission. They just want to drop bombs on people. Let's try this. And it got to the point where we've got like ordnance guys like disassembling rockets to put the right warheads on the right rocket bodies to be able to provide a maximum minute and a half illumination coming down to the ground for you guys on the ground so you can see what you're doing. And it was just amazing. It worked really great. But it took a team of the Rich Crabtrees and General Gaylor's just coming together saying, how do we make this work? Here's our problem set. Let's sit down and figure it out. And it was awesome. It was awesome to be a part of.
That's cool. Yeah, the longbow, the Apache longbow in particular, just that airframe amazes me. And like they've tried to field, new aircraft and new drones and stuff in the last 10 years, as you know, but they keep upgrading the Apache, and the lethality that the Apache brings is still very relevant on a modern battlefield. And I think now like they're looking at having it move into more of a command and control type air vehicle, but it's still very, very relevant. I mean, the stuff that they're putting on the Apache now today it makes it even more relevant in the modern
Yeah.
battlefield.
The Echo model is a incredible machine. Of course,
Yeah,
it's faster, it's more lethal, more survivable. It's all the things they need. Survivability, lethality, and maintainability is much higher than it was in a Delta model even. But what I think is interesting, and I find that I use in my day job now, is it's changed the HMI. I mean, this is kind of a tech podcast, I guess, so I
yeah,
don't want to
go
get too
for it.
technical, but it really has. We've gone from hands-on flight controls, and we used to call it strapping the aircraft on, right? Like you get in the aircraft, you're not getting in the aircraft, you're putting the aircraft on.
Yep.
And it's becoming a part, it's becoming an extension of your body because you're interacting with it on such a physical level. Compared to the HMI now in an Echo model, you're monitoring systems. And there's some dangers that come with that. And I learned it pretty firsthand in a Delta, going from even Alpha to Deltas that had altitude hold, cruise control, basically, in civilian terms. It had cruise control and could fly itself pretty much. I mean, you could engage your systems and, put a dip in and eat a
Yeah.
sandwich. And just you're just monitoring a system, but there's the danger in it is that you get bored just monitoring a system. Right? When you can start an aircraft up by going, just one button push. Okay, she started. Versus having, to do all these things to do it, you tend to get really dependent on that automation. the company I work for, Tech now, we build air traffic control displays. And, the Secretary Duffy came out and said, we need a brand new air traffic control system for the entire national airspace system. I mean, we're talking thousands of workstations, 450 plus buildings. I mean, the backbone, the radar systems. I mean, they're still using copper wire telephones, man. I mean, it's not even VoIP. I mean, it's really antiquated stuff. Their display panels, which we make, the radar displays, it's obviously two dimensional. It's based on 1990s technology that we sold to them in 2004. They've upgraded it with the same exact technology 4 times. What's the point in that? It's two dimensional in the fact that it gives a track of an aircraft and it gives a line showing the heading, but then there's another bar on top that shows the altitude. So now this air traffic controller is interacting with it, talking to the pilot, and interpreting a two-dimensional surface into a three-dimensional mindset. And we're going to build a brand new air traffic control system that he doesn't have to do all that. He's going to have a giant 43-inch beautiful HD display. He's going to have multi-windows. It's all going to be digitized. He's going to have a 3D representation of that aircraft on approach and what that looks like, and he's going to monitor it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think,
Right.
I worked in the aviation business for several years, and the systems, monitoring, not only where the aircraft is in space and time, but where other aircraft are. So the traffic systems and synthetic vision systems that are on modern aircraft, they've outpaced a lot of the ground systems that air traffic
Yeah.
controllers have access to. It seems like, because I have a few buddies that are air traffic controllers, and they echo the same
Nice.
sentiment. Like they said, the stuff they're using is ancient. I mean, and it wasn't. It's not only till recently where we have ADS-B where you can track aircraft very accurately with GPS signals,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can shoot approaches with RNAV approaches. So you can use GPS now to a high fidelity to navigate aircraft, and it doesn't seem like the air traffic controller
Yeah.
technologies that they have access to in the towers
He's getting
have kept pace.
his data boils down to a radar feed.
It's a radar feed. Okay, so that's
That's
that's that's probably
it.
the I've never heard it so simply put. Like it's really he's monitoring a radar feed, and then they have obviously they have RF radios too. They're talking to
Right.
pilots over
Right.
over voice.
And there's the level of trust, right? I think Secretary Duffy kind of ignored this in his initial speech a little bit. Is that there's a level of trust between us aviators and those air traffic controllers.
Oh yeah,
If I'm IFR and one of the air traffic controllers, Betsy calls me up and says, November 12345, turn left heading, 250, climb and maintain 3000. Okay,
yeah,
I'm going to do it, right? I mean, and she's going to rely on me that Jay's going to do that, right? Because there's other traffic around me that I don't know about, and that's a level of trust between the two of us. Now, if you get technology in there and it starts disrupting that level of trust, you're going to start seeing a lot more accidents. You're going to see a lot more dangerous situations that we are out of our control.
yep,
And they're absolutely right. And I think that's what's going on. And we need to step up our game for these air traffic controllers because it's a shame what we're putting them through. The stress levels they have to begin with. I don't know if you've ever, I don't want to use the word party, but hung out with some air traffic controllers. Like
I have.
I mean, 45,000 flights on average in the
Yeah,
United States national airspace system on a day, every day.
it's a
And these
lot.
guys are controlling 15, 20 aircraft at a time that
Yeah,
they're monitoring, and they're communicating with the controllers to the left and the right. And I mean, it is intense, and they have thousands of lives in their hands. And
yeah,
we're telling them to do it with a rowboat instead of a jet ski. And it's ridiculous.
yeah. Well said. No, I think, and I hear the same thing directly from my buddies that are working in towers and they're air traffic controllers today. Like they said that it's a very difficult job. It's demanding. They work long shifts, um, and it's very clear to them, based on what they've seen, that the technology is not paced.
Yeah.
What's available out there, what's technically feasible, is not made it into the control towers.
I mean,
So
they just started implementing a program called SAI, Situational Awareness Initiative, that allows a tower to take ADS-B information off of a taxiing aircraft and show them where it is in real time on one of our displays, which I
yeah, sure.
appreciate. And he can see, and it'll alert him if there's a possible runway incursion or some kind of traffic, or somebody steps over a hold short line or something like that, it alerts him to it because he's got, you know, 10, 15, 20 planes moving on the ground at any given moment. And you just, there's at some given point, the human condition demands he's not going to be able to monitor all of it. And the same thing in the cockpit. I mean, taxiing is probably one of the most confusing damn things I've ever done in an aircraft. You know, you get taxi instructions that are coming at you like that, and you're looking at a map that's like this big. You're like, Juliet, India, Mike,
I know it.
3, 4. Where? I don't see Mike. It's just like, Christ. Can I get progressive taxiway instructions?
I know.
And
You got to do it
that,
sometimes.
yeah, sometimes. And then they're like,
You got to hold your hand.
sorry, I don't know where I'm going. You know, it's interesting though, but we just now got that. We've been rocking ADS-B for how long? And we should have had some kind of system to avoid two planes colliding on a runway or a taxiway. And it's just now being implemented.
Yeah.
You're slow about it. I mean, they do 3 or 4 towers every quarter, and it's like we should be doing 15 towers, 20 towers a quarter.
Yeah.
This should be something that's in every tower, but
I agree.
it's tough to. We see the international community. You know, we provided the systems for Eurocontrol. Of course, just the hardware. We don't do any software, and it's amazing. I mean, they got this giant circular room, all these big, beautiful displays. They can take control of displays. They can relieve controllers without even moving. You know, they can freeze displays. They record at the glass. They have all these systems, and it's a beautiful system. We're moving uncompressed data over 4K, at 4K, you know, over fiber. You know, so that it's in real. There's no latency whatsoever. A lot of backup redundant systems for them, and then you look at us, the U.S., right? We should be the most technologically advanced people out there, and we got
Yeah.
1990s technology.
I know. From an aircraft certification perspective, both on the military and commercial side, like, you would think, and we are leading the way in a lot of developments, but, from a ground station perspective, I guess we're a little bit far behind, so
Yeah,
that's interesting. I think there's definitely opportunities for, bringing in automation to aviation, obviously to the automotive industry. And I was talking to, I met this lawyer just like at one of my kids' events. He was a liability lawyer, so he works for a big insurance company. And I was
okay.
just out of curiosity, I was like, what if, one of these autonomous cars, like a Tesla or a Waymo, has an incursion, like runs into somebody or runs into another vehicle? And he's like, well, then it becomes a product liability case. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
not technically the operator of the vehicle is not at fault if they're not driving it. And he said then they have to turn it into a product liability case and go after, Tesla or Waymo.
Right.
But he said like in general, the safety data has been pretty good for autonomous vehicles, but it's a mess. Like it's a legal mess if something does happen.
Well, it's, a very common heuristic, right? We don't hear about the 45,999 flights that take off and land successfully every single day.
Right.
We only hear about the one that goes skidding down a runway and scares the crap out of everybody, right? I mean, that's just part of the human condition. And so when there's a drone accident or when a vehicle, autonomous vehicle strikes another vehicle, the safety community as a whole, I used to work for a company called HDT Global. They've got the robotic combat vehicle, the
Yeah.
Hunter Wolf.
Great company. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Loved really working with that vehicle. I got to drive it with the controller and, play with the follow me function,
Oh, cool.
which actually follows the operator's path, not just it just doesn't go to you, but has all these systems. And the first thing, especially on the Army side of the house, is, oh, no, you can't use that. It's going to run over a soldier laying in the grass.
Yep.
And it's like, well, be a good leader and know where your soldiers are, right? Like if you got a vehicle following the exact path you're walking on, don't step over your soldier. But that apprehensiveness to have an autonomous vehicle in control of itself, because they demonstrated that we could have one of these Hunter Wolves with a mine roller on the front of it, and it
Yep.
could clear a minefield for us. Basically, it's mowing the lawn, right? That's not too technologically advanced.
Yeah.
Well, what if it runs over a soldier? Well, why is a soldier in a minefield? Like, there, at some given point, you got to accept that there's going to be some accidents, right? There's going to be the 0.001% chance is going to happen. That's why the chance exists. And you got to mitigate it the best you can and drive forward with the technology. You can't just let it stop.
Yeah, no, we used unmanned systems in Afghanistan to do exactly what you're describing. I'll show you a picture of one
Hmm.
of them. It was a Croatian system. This was called a Doking, and we
Yeah.
used it. It's just a remote controlled system, and we would do exactly that. We would use it to really clear mostly dismounted paths for
Right.
of IEDs. And I tell everybody this too, even folks that are developing these types of systems, like you mentioned. This is life saving technology for me. I mean, we had two similar systems like this that both got destroyed by IEDs, and thank goodness there wasn't a soldier anywhere near it.
Right. We just need
So
another. We need another truck.
yeah,
HDT came to me and said, "Hey, can you go to Fredericksburg where they host their R&D
hmm
lab? They got an amazing facility down there, and they showed me a robot that they wanted to demo, and they make the arm basically for L3 Harris and for some of these other IED type robots. And they said for the demo, we're going to demonstrate the levels of articulation in each joint to approach and autonomously open a door and close the door."
cool.
And I said, "Wait a minute. You just told me you can take a robot, send it into a room, and have it open a door for me?" They're like, "Yeah." I was like, "Do you understand the most dangerous thing I've ever done in my life is stack on a door, open it, and go in that room, not knowing what's on the other side of the door? And now you're telling me I can make a robot do that?" Yeah, so I got on the phone with SOCOM. I said, "I got this thing. You need to check this thing out." And they're moving forward, of course, but it was a few years ago. But yeah, sometimes I think these engineers come up with some really cool tech and way things can do it, but they don't see it from a user's perspective
Yeah,
because they were stacked on a door and gone in and done bad things to bad people in the dark of night like we have, and they don't see the potential of it. They did it just to demonstrate the articulation and how cool the robot was. And I was like, no, no, no. There's a whole different application for that. And
yeah,
it was really, really neat to see. Same thing with, Hunter Defense and the Hunter Wolf and just getting it out there and demonstrating the technology. Of course, the Marine Corps was completely different because we're Marines and we just put guns on everything.
it's
So the
true.
Marine Corps put a MIC on it, they put a tow
Oh,
missile on it, they put a 30 mic on it, 50 cals, mortar systems, autonomous drones tethered to it. I mean, just it was like, all right, we're just doing monster garage stuff at this point.
that's
And of
funny.
course, it worked amazingly. I can autonomously or semi-autonomously operate a vehicle from a kilometer away with a 30 mic on it. I mean, come on,
Yeah,
I could take
that's
out the
compelling.
Giants. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's that's lethality right there. And now we advance into the way we're looking at fighting now in Ukraine. I think it's generally understood that by our leaders that I don't think two soldiers are going to see each other on a battlefield ever again.
it's
I
unlikely.
think there's going to be first contact is going to be autonomous robotic vehicles or semi-autonomous being fought from soldiers from different locations. But that is going to be that initial contact. I think by the time that soldier gets there in an M1 Echo 3, new tank, he's going to be walking over scorched earth. I mean, we've got weapon systems that seems to separate us. I mean, their standard artillery rounds we could get going 15 miles, and
Yeah, I think you're right.
now they go 95.
Yeah,
Right? I mean, you're never going to see, and you have a transparent battlefield. You've got so much ISR. All these robotic vehicles are reporting data on enemy locations and things like that. So you can't hide. There's nowhere to hide.
no,
So if I know where the enemy is, there's going to be a lot of missiles and artillery inbound. And Ukraine's learned that lesson. If it stops, it dies. That's the bottom line.
I've heard the same thing. And as a former ground guy, it's like the feedback I'm hearing is like you basically can't move. Because like they'll spot movement, like the drones have cameras that
Yep.
spot movement. They can do facial recognition. And oh, the other thing too that I found interesting is there's companies out there that are working on uh, ways to reduce your signature like on the ground. So they have thermal cloaks because a lot of these
Mhm.
things have thermal sensors as well. So these people are having to cloak themselves, maybe in a trench or
Yep.
somewhere in a wooded area to hide from these drones, which is and a lot of times they'll kind of pair the drones together. They'll have one drone that just is out there identifying targets, maybe has a laser rangefinder on it, and then the other one, they'll launch from somewhere else, and it'll be the actual warhead.
Yeah. One
So
way
it's
drones.
yeah, I mean it's kind of different. I'm seeing the army now too. they're starting to play around with putting loitering munitions on helicopters. I think
Yeah.
they've done it on the Black Hawk, maybe the Apache, definitely the Black Hawk, where they put
Mhm.
basically a tube on one of the pylons, and they can launch loitering munitions from whatever it is, 5,000 to 6,000 feet AGL, which is kind of cool.
Right. The launched
So
effects are really a huge, and they started with air launched effects, which is pretty much that system, and now they're just calling it launched effects because I can launch them from robotic vehicles on the ground as well.
yeah,
If I can congest the excuse me, congest the airspace that much, what they're starting to realize is if the airspace across FLOT, yep,
this is it, huh?
yeah, and if the airspace is that congested forward of the line of troops, can I really fly a helicopter through that?
It's a good question. Yeah, I'm thinking too. I mean, the idea that helicopters will be able to operate in battle spaces like this seems a little far fetched to me. I mean, like this, you're talking about something that moves at what 140 knots,
Yeah,
has a huge thermal acoustic signature, is a relatively big aircraft compared to a smaller
the
drone.
bus. I got a Chinook. Is a Chinook going to be able to get through that kind of airspace?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think our leaders are kind of reevaluating that. I think that's one of the aspects of why FARA got canceled.
Yep.
I know FLAR is looking at it very seriously. Yeah, I work with Colonel Medaglia here at PO Aviation, and I've had some casual discussions with her over a drink or whatever. And it's a challenge. It really is. Is how do we fight in a contested airspace where we can no longer own the air, which is something we've been doing for decades. We kill ground, defense systems, we kill air defense systems, we get rid of all the aircraft that could shoot us down, and then we own the air. And that's not the case anymore. Now it's contested by these drones that $100 quadcopter can take down a Chinook. And I don't know why it surprises me. Literally in 2006, I'm flying over Baghdad and I shoved a Puma in my rocket pod.
Oh wow.
The
Okay.
Puma, yeah, the little, I can't
Yeah.
remember the nomenclature of that thing. I landed back at a fob and I'm like pushing the rockets out of the pod, going, don't blow up, don't blow up. And like the pieces of this Puma are falling out. I'm like, I don't know who I'm going to tell about this. But whatever that operator saw at the last second probably scared the crap out of him because it was an Apache. It happened. I mean, that was 2006,
Yeah.
right? Where we weren't coordinating the airspace well enough. Now, how are we going to do that? When I got every infantry guy taking a drone and throwing it in the air, I'm like, whoa, man. So, what is the role of Army aviation in that fight now? I mean, we're not going to do an air assault. Like the risk of doing an air assault and moving the 101st into a strategic location to fight the enemy you lose a division doing that. That's just not feasible for us.
I know. It's
So
true.
is Army aviation going to be relegated down to just moving troops back and forth to the FLOT and supplies and things like that, and not working forward into that contested airspace except for perhaps special operations? Is that what Army aviation is going to get boiled down to? Kind of seems like it.
I know. It's like, the idea of having a big, exquisite piece of metal that's less, flying around less than the speed of sound on a modern
Right.
battlefield. I'll just leave it at that. Like less than the speed of sound is probably a good, line in the sand. So, I'm thinking like new rotary craft. The A-10 kind of falls in this category. So I know initially we were trying to outfit the Ukrainian military with a bunch of A-10s, and they said no, absolutely not. Like we need F-16s. Like
Yeah.
A-10's like not going to do it.
Yeah.
The
Too slow.
A-10 is like 400 knots, maybe. I mean, it's
Yeah. Too slow, too low.
too slow, too low. And when you have, a shoulder-fired munition or even a drone, which is a very real thing, where you can take out, a system that's several orders of magnitude more expensive and more exquisite,
Right.
the math doesn't work out. And I think right now, like the U.S. is at a precipice right now where we have to make a decision if we're going to stand up like a UAV industry in the U.S. Because right now we're not even close to the manufacturing capacity that we need to keep pace with a near peer threat. I don't think.
I'm going to write that down. What to invest in?
Yeah, right. I know, but
Yeah.
yeah,
See how that works out for me.
you
There's
see
our
these
investment pick for the day.
you see these swarms of drones. Even just in they do them in lieu of fireworks shows sometimes. Like they have these like
Mhm.
drone shows.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's two sides of it because like yes, that is a scary approximation that in the Ukraine there's millions of UAVs being delivered to the Ukraine. But then you think again, like how easy are these drones to jam? I'm seeing some of them are controlled with a fiber optic line, like that's in a giant spool. That seems like a pretty difficult thing to jam.
Right.
Some of these drones don't require any external input. Some of them just have like yeah,
Yeah.
they have edge computing. They have a small CPU on board and they have pre-planned grid coordinates, or maybe they have a computer vision
Target
model that can
recognition.
target recognition. Yeah, yeah. So I think all that stuff is being, I don't want to say democratized, but like you and I could now build an underwater unmanned vessel, a surface vessel, or an aerial vehicle, and you can basically download the flight controller software off GitHub. Not basically, you can. I mean,
Yeah.
there's Arduino has a repository. I think last time I looked, it was like, I want to say it was like several hundred million lines of code where you can basically have
Jesus.
collision avoidance software, flight controller software, and you can download it all. It's all open source, and that's what the
Hmm.
Ukrainians used for this latest attack. They used all open
Fine.
source flight controller software.
Well, one of the trade shows after, because we met at MDEX, right?
I
Yeah, I
think
think it was
it might have been GV sets.
GV sets. Yeah,
Yeah,
one of them because
yeah,
it was because that's coming up again in August.
yeah.
Reminds me, by the way, we're doing a reception. You're coming.
Oh, cool. Right on. Yeah,
Yeah, and but just seeing how this unfolds, there was a Ukrainian officer, and you could tell like he had been in the fight, like
yeah.
he had that. I'm really tired. I flew all the way to America to tell these Americans what I'm seeing, and I saw it yesterday, and you could see that look on his face, man. He was rode hard, man. And he says, on average, we launch over 1,000 drones every day.
That's hard for anybody that I've served with or myself to comprehend, because for us, like throwing a shadow or a raven
Yeah,
like in
yeah,
the air, that was it was kind of a rare occurrence for us, man. We didn't really use those a ton. We had tethered ISR assets on those
yeah.
blimps. They had massive sensors on them. But to hear from a Ukrainian military leader that they're launching like thousands of drones per day, yeah, that's the magnitude is way different than I think what
Yeah, I don't even know how you start in airspace command and control and deconfliction on that. Like, I can't even fathom.
I was thinking the
How
same
would
thing.
there's no way you could take that many reports in of all those flight plans where all those drones happen simultaneously and come up with some airspace coordination measure. There's no way to do that.
No,
I mean, it that boggles the mind, and I think there's going to have to be a level of risk associated with that we're just going to have to accept. And I think it's easier to accept it knowing that they're drones, right? Like if the drone crashes, the drone crashes. We'll just get another drone.
yeah,
Kind of like our IED robots back in the day, right? Like if we send the robot in, if it blows up, it blows up. We got another one in the back. Get your backpack. I think it's going to be that kind of. There's going to be acceptable loss, but with that comes an acceptable cost. So even HDT Global and American Rheinmetall Vehicle, they were going after SMET Increment 2, right? And
yep,
yeah, they got a cap on how much that thing can cost because we're going to lose a lot of them. It's an
yeah,
acceptable loss. It's a piece
yeah.
of
You're right.
equipment we know. We like the drones; they're fun, and Hollywood makes them look autonomous and cool and all the stuff, right? Just like Disney does with the dog. My dog, I talk to my dog way too much, man. And sometimes he responds, but we can't have that kind of relationship with these robotic combat vehicles. We have to accept that they're going to go out. If they're going to do that, they're going to be pretty cheap
Yeah,
with a lot of capability.
no, I agree with that.
So
Yeah,
that's going to be a hard lesson, I think, for us to get over and kind of fight the human condition is to think of those things as part of us in some way, especially when you have a generation of soldiers that grew up with semi-autonomous type things in their life. We're a display manufacturer for Ceotech, and they all want one of these.
yeah,
You don't want an FBCB2 Blue Force Tracker giant, thing. I mean, those I understand that because back in the day they were horrible, right? I mean, the best thing you ever did was chalk the vehicle, but they don't want that thing. They want to mount an iPad. And then when you explain to them that iPad's not going to last, Bubba, like it's not going to work at 120 degrees. And it's definitely not going to work at negative 46 degrees.
no, it's not.
And the first vibration it hits and the screen's going to crack and you're going to be pissed. I said, so I got to ruggedize it and I got to make it kind of think, but they still want to be able to get out that vehicle, take it with them, go to the next vehicle, plug it in, take it out like an iPad, talk to their troops, show them what they want. They want that level of autonomy. They want that level of having data with them no matter where they go, just like they've grown up with. I mean, there's 3-year-olds walking around with nicer phones than I have, for Christ's
I
sake.
know it. It's true.
But it's just, we're going to have to accommodate that mentality in terms of technology for a 20-year-old now. And I mean, we had a friend of ours came over, Dominique Seagraves, last night, and she brought her son. Will's a hockey player, 20 years old, prime of his life. I mean, he's just crushing it. Brings his little girlfriend over. I mean, it was fun. And I took
Cool.
him upstairs, and I thought I would impress him with my tech. And I put my MetaQuest on him, and the program's called ACE. And you have a 3D printed 6-hour P320 that I shoot in competitions,
Oh,
and you
wow.
put the controller in it, and you holster it. And in virtual reality, you can shoot USPSA shoots.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know you could
And
do
he was
that.
like, "Oh yeah, I did this. Tink, 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 tink." And I'm like, "None of my stuff's cool, man. I don't
He's
have any
already.
cool tech for the 20-year-olds." And I think they're going to look at the Army the same way as we did. It's like, "Oh God, man, this is so old. Like, come on, man, we just came out with this."
I know. It's definitely a trade-off too. Like, having something that's portable and something that, is part of your kit versus something that's durable. It's
Yeah.
always a trade-off. And then anytime you have another piece of kit, another piece of electronics, you need a battery for it. So it adds weight. It's one more
Mm-hmm.
thing that to rely on. So I don't know.
How am I moving the data? Is it secure when I'm moving the data?
Yeah.
How long is that battery going to last? We've done some serious R&D research into the tablet market, and what you get a lot of in most of the market space is a commercial tablet that's ruggedized into a body or a case or
Yep.
something like that. But it still fails in the environmentals, in the temperature ranges and stuff like that. And you can shock and vibe them and waterproof them and all that stuff. But temperatures in electronics is really the hard one to get any kind of commercial product to meet those standards. I think the standards are ridiculous. I don't know if you've ever been in negative 46 degrees, but operating the display is the least of my concerns at that point.
Yeah. You're in survival
So,
mode.
right. They kind of, Cummins is a great company. I love them to death. They're going to put a display on the outside of these large trailer power systems. It's one of our smart view displays. And they're like, it's got to work at negative 46 degrees. I was like, the soldier can't work at negative 46 degrees, man. But that display works. It's the same thing on the Navy. They're like, it has to withstand a 40G impact.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, so let me get this straight. This workstation that this, Navy kid's sitting at, this sailor's sitting there, to use the right term, at 40 G's, he's a pile of goo, but the display works.
That's
So we're
funny.
just going to get more sailors? Like, where is the logic in that? It just doesn't. I get it. It's got to be survivable, but I think there's a little bit of engineering creep going on there. Well, if it's 30 G's, well, we made one that's 40 G's, and it builds and builds and builds. And so they changed the standards to meet what the industry's done to
Yep.
separate themselves from, competition. And now we have these ridiculously high standards that I think we could back off a little bit from, and probably would help move forward some of these programs in autonomous robotic combat vehicles and things like that. If we just kind of backed off the standards a little bit, but when you have thousands and thousands of contractors who are on each arsenal paid to sit there and come up with things to make industry do, it's kind of what you get.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think with unmanned systems in particular, and this goes for any domains, I think there should be an opportunity to speed up development and fielding by taking more risk. I mean, you're not having to put life support systems, CBRN systems inside of a manned vehicle like you would a Stryker ICV or a Bradley
Right. Right.
or tank. Like so, I think there should be a willingness to take a little bit more risk and speed up I think the adaptation of unmanned systems is that should be a key priority for the DoD is to speed that development, speed that route to fielding. So because you're not having a person ride in it, like there's not a human being in it. So
And that goes back to the acceptable risk for a robot versus a ground vehicle. So stop trying to apply
precisely, yeah.
all those things. And I think, with the Army Transformation Initiative that came out, was it 3 weeks ago now?
Hmm.
I think the writing's on the wall. They canceled the robotic combat vehicle program. because they saw they could not get it to where they wanted it to be. You know, they could not get to that high autonomous level. I mean, we've been working on it for 5 years, and one of the comments out of the program office, Chatham House rules. I can't say who it was, but we haven't yet defined autonomy.
No, we really
It's been
haven't. I mean,
5 years.
yeah, we've definitely borrowed like the SAE standards for autonomy, which is, kind of like what Tesla and,
Right,
some of these automobile manufacturers fall into. But it's very different when you talk about off-road unstructured autonomy,
right.
where you're not tracking a road lane, like you don't have a
Yeah,
painted
you're
line.
you're finding a path somehow,
Yeah, yeah,
figuring it out.
it's much more complex. So, but yeah, no, I appreciate you hopping on here, Jay. This is fun to talk to you about different technology, and
Thanks.
look forward to seeing you a few weeks too. So feel free to
Yeah.
stay on for a minute. And we'll just upload your